Birds 365 guys. Oh, we got a trio today. Jody McDonald, along with my co-host, Jeff Kerr, joined by our first guest of the day, a familiar face. He's frozen in time. He's ready to break down day one of Eagle practice with us, John McMullen. J-Mac, how was practice day one?
Was energetic. Yeah, kind of probably apropos for the Nick Sirianni era. A little bit more active than a typical day one practice in a modern training camp.
Are you attacking the day, John?
No. I'm attacking my rest, Jeff. Never attack the day. Attack the rest. Yeah, Nick. I think Nick says something in every press conference where people kind of chuckle and hang on to it. And by the way, Howie Roseman chuckles at Nick Sirianni when he does this stuff, when he's up there, which, by the way, that was a surprise. We got to get to that. But, he banged the dais again, got fired up. Yeah, he said, right now they're attacking rest. He's a trip, but none of that matters. Can he coach? Can he not coach? Can he win football games? Can he not win football games?
All right, yeah. Well, let's attack what you said we should attack. Didn't expect. Did you have an inkling ahead of time that both Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman would give you guys day one media access, sit down and field questions on whatever you guys wanted to? Is that out of the norm for day one of Eagles training camp as well?
Yeah, Howie talking. We got notified during practice that he was going to speak, so it was kind of last minute. And you start, wondering. The schedule has Nick Sirianni on it, and it'll tell you which coordinators speaking on a particular day. But for Howie Roseman, yeah, that came up during practice, and I started to think, okay, what's he trying to do here? What's he trying to accomplish here? Because he typically doesn't talk after the first day of training camp. And my first thought was he's going to shut down the Deshaun Watson rumors. He didn't do that, though. No. He didn't do that, which surprised me. And I guess from that standpoint, he wanted to talk about Zach Ertz because it seems as if it's more likely from all the talk, and you know how much we've talked about that, Jody. He says he's going to be here more likely than not than week one. We'll see. I still think he might be playing the game of chicken, but if he's here, he's here. And it's going to be interesting because it's got to change the offensive philosophy. I've talked about that a lot. He's just better than any of the third receivers you could potentially project. So that's going to have to shift the offensive thinking a little bit.
John, when Howie was talking to Zach Ertz yesterday, it was a good 10, 15 minutes? Like, what do you think those two were congregating about before he came to the podium?
Howie's very savvy. He probably wants that visual, probably wants to show people that, hey, we're not at each other's throats, which they never were. I'm not the only one to report that dust up wasn't about his contract. It was originally kind of framed that way. It was about training problems, training methods. The Eagles wanted Zach more under when he was injured or more in the facility working out with the team trainers. He wanted to do some individual stuff. That was what that was about. So I think he's very PR savvy, and I think he was trying to get what he got, and that was a photo op, so to speak. They don't hate each other, something like that.
One of the things I was trying to understand yesterday, the coach was talking about, John, maybe you can better explain it. We talk about it all the time here in the show about 12 personnel. To me, 12 personnel just means two tight ends on the field. Is 12 personnel, two tight ends tight to the line? Because I think at one point Sirianni said we could play two tight ends in 11 personnel. So they're just going to split Zach Ertz out and pretend that he's a wide receiver? Yeah, there's going to need to be adjusting to this offense, and I'm not completely unsure exactly what that adjusting is going to look like.
No, you're right, Jody. And personnel groupings are kind of goofy in that matter. Yeah, 12 personnel means 2 tight ends are on the field. It doesn't mean they're in line. You can, if there's 2 tight ends on the field, uh, they're labeled as tight ends. It's just a labeling system. So he could be playing on a particular play, and maybe the best example of this will be, Pitts when he gets going with the Falcons is, okay, you're going to label him a tight end, but he's really an X receiver or flex receiver or wherever he's going to be playing. So it is overrated when people talk about personnel groupings because you use guys in a different way. They had this 21 speed formation that he mentioned. Everybody got onto that with 2 running backs on the field, Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell. And, okay, it starts there and maybe Gainwell splits out in motion and is playing receiver. So it is just the labeling system to tell you what kind of personnel is on the field. Coaches use it basically just to try to match up better. So a defensive coach understands there's 2 running backs on the field. You have that extra running thread if they try to throw a bubble screen or something like that. You're trying to make your defense aware. But, if your tight end is a better receiver than your third receiver, who cares what the label is? And so Nick is right in that aspect of it.
John, everybody wants to talk about Jalen Hurts going 5 of 14 or 5 of 15 or whatever he was yesterday. But from your vantage point, did you see Jalen Hurts improve as the practice session was going?
It's day one. I'm not going to kill him. 5 of 15 is bad. That's how I had it. I saw 5 of 14. But what does it matter? 5 of 14, 5 of 15. I will say there's a couple contextual points to that. One, they were doing everything in the red zone. So everything is close quarters. Everything is tight. It becomes more difficult to throw the ball into tight spaces. And they did that. And I asked Nick, I said, why so much red zone on day one? And he said it's the recommendation of the trainers and the medical staff. They don't want guys, airing out, running 60 yards and getting soft tissue injuries on day one. So they kept everything in close quarters, which makes some sense if you think about it. But that makes it more difficult for the offense. Like my game ball of the day went to Darius Slay, who completely, and I mean completely shut down Devontae Smith. Just locked him down, was welcome to the NFL moment, but he doesn't have to worry about him going by him. He doesn't have to worry about space on the field. Everything is, and he's a savvy player who's been around for a long time. So he knows how to use the back of the end zone. He knows how to use the sidelines, especially against a young receiver. So if you're looking at one day, you say, wow, Darius Slay looks like the best corner in football. Devontae Smith isn't what he's cracked up to be. But you got to add that context into it. And, when they get to a more normal practice setting, it's going to be more difficult to handle a player like Devontae Smith. And that day, we're probably going to be talking about him beating up on Darius Slay. That's sort of how training camp goes.
All right. So if everything they ran today was 10 yards in, 15 yards in, practice day 2, what are they going to do? Back up to the 25? Give them a little bit more leeway so we can see if some of these offensive weapons work? Put a little bit more of a test to the defensive players? The coach didn't fill you in on the progression of using the entire field, did he?
No, he didn't. It is interesting, though, because they do give more power these days to the medical staffs and the training staffs. And, the coaches kind of have to listen to their recommendations on what guys can do, what guys can't do. It's just a different time, and you got to get used to it. And I thought, by the way, it was a real positive step for Nick Sirianni as a coach because, okay, he's put under these limitations. And so he got work in the best way he could get work in because it was really more competitive, and that's his word, than a typical day one NFL training camp practice. He got a lot of good work in what was essentially 75 minutes with, 25, 30 yards of the field. I thought it was a positive sign that he adapted and was able to take advantage of the limitations to get some good work in.
Now, John, we get Jonathan Gann speaking today. And one thing I wanted to touch up on was Fletcher Cox saying they were doing like a 3-4 zone and he was kind of in the middle there. Do you want to further explain that?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple times where you saw sort of a 3-4 sort of. I don't even want to call it a traditional 3-4. To me, it looked more like an amoeba type of thing, and I think that's maybe what you'll see a little bit more when we talk about the stand-up rushers and the A gaps and the overload blitzes that Mike Zimmer likes to do. I don't think you're going to see too much traditional 3-4. And if you do, you're damn well not going to see Fletcher Cox playing nose tackle. So I don't think it was, if anyone reported that, I don't know if they did. I don't think it was a traditional 3-4 when you got the big 330-pound guys supposed to occupy two blockers. I think it was more of a sort of the kickoff point to getting those stand-up rushers in there and getting, the opposing quarterback to say, okay, who's coming? Who's dropping? I think that's what they're starting to pull out. And Fletcher said, we asked him, what's the difference between this and the prior defense? And he's like, I just do what I do. And he said he's always playing 3 techniques, so he's happy.
J-Mac, yesterday with the quote-unquote ones, which, again, the head coach wants to stay away from describing or letting us do too much analysis as best he can. Davion Taylor, Kayvon Wallace, both starting in yesterday's scrimmage action, last year's high draft picks or medium high draft picks, who I've asked almost every guest we've had on the show over the last week or so, if one of these two guys is actually going to contribute, which one is it going to be? Well, they both were starting yesterday. What do we read into that? That they both progressed nicely from year 1 to year 2, that, there's a couple injury issues, so that's why they were with the starters, or, Howie Roseman is already dictating who the starters for this football team are.
Yeah, I think they're listening to Birds 365. I told him to throw, hey, you drafted Davion Taylor, throw him in the deep end of the pool. If you can't play, you can't play. But, again, I bring up Gannon's history, and he wants athletic linebackers. Everywhere he's been, he's got athletic linebackers. Well, you don't have that here. But he's athletic. I don't know if he can play a lick because we didn't get to see him last year. He's obviously very raw. Now, the only reason he started was Alex Singleton was on the COVID list. So that's why he was in with the first team with Eric Wilson. Same with Kayvon Wallace. He was in the first team because Rodney McLeod starts on the PUP list, but which is no surprise either. So both are sort of that second tier. If a starter goes down, if a starter's not available, they'd be next up. I think it's a bigger surprise that Taylor's in that position than Wallace. I mean, we kind of knew it was Wallace or Epps, Marcus Epps at safety, if Rodney wasn't able to go. And then you start thinking, well, Epps is a single high safety, coverage safety. That's what Anthony Harris does. Maybe Kayvon Wallace is a better complement because he's more of a box safety. But at linebacker, I mean, I didn't think they put Davion Taylor out there, and maybe it is Howie Roseman. I mean, he took him in the 3rd round. And by the way, who was the starting left tackle? Everybody's on that train, Jody. Jordan Mailata. Nope, it was Andre Dillard.
John, I wanted to ask about Jalen Reagor too. I thought this was really interesting just from going down the timeline yesterday. It looked like he wasn't going to practice. Then he put pads on and then he took them off. Well, what was the deal with that?
Yeah, he's got a lower body injury. So, I mean, the Eagles listed him as limited. It was probably one of those deals where he got on the field and was going to try to go. And then something felt a little tight. Obviously, they don't clarify what injuries are this time of year. They did clarify that Isaac Seumalo is dealing with a hamstring issue, but it's usually the Doug Peterson infused hockey mentality of upper body, lower body.
Lower body.
So my guess is he wanted to try to go. They said, all right, see how you feel. And maybe felt a little bit of tweak, but it's not serious because he stayed out there the whole time. He was, for instance, he was back with the punt returners, sort of right with them, watching as they took a few reps. So if for anything serious, you're going into the building. So I wouldn't be concerned about it, other than obviously Jalen had some injury issues last season, but even those they weren't soft tissue. It was the shoulder first and then the hand, or I forget what it was when he caught that ball down the middle. But he's got to be out there. He's got to improve. There's another guy we keep bringing up, high draft picks, because Jalen wasn't able to go, because Greg Ward wasn't able to go. There was JJ, first team. So you see all these premium picks, these day 1 and day 2 picks, they get more opportunities than the other guys, day 3 picks or undrafted free agents.
Yeah, my buddy Mr. Ward's sick yesterday. He's sick of everyone saying that he's just not good enough to be a starting wide receiver for the Eagles. So he'll get over that.
Greg Ward, the first I know of, the first human being since this pandemic started to get sick of a non-COVID illness.
Yeah.
No, that's
somehow it's not COVID related. Yeah. Exactly. It seemed weird. That used to be life all the time. Hey, I don't feel well. I'm sick.
Somebody
you don't have to explain it as COVID, non-COVID, vaccinated, non-vaccinated. Anyway, you brought up the punt returners. How was your first look at Aaron Cephas?
I leave the punting to Jimmy Kempski. He's a good punt. He's my buddy from the Philly Voice. He's the punt guy. I'm the personal protector guy. I always put that out there. I say if you want to figure out somebody on the back end of the roster who's going to make the team, look at who first team personal protector is. Because that gives you an indication they have an inside track to a job. Doesn't mean they're going to carry. Elijah Riley did it yesterday. So for those of you in roster pools, now the problem there is Andrew Adams, who's a player probably people don't realize, signed as a free agent from Tampa Bay. He was not available yesterday, so he might throw a sort of monkey wrench into that, but. I'm the personal protector guy. So it was Elijah Riley and Anthony Harris was the second team personal protector. And they always have a veteran on the second team. So a little inside roster tip for you.
John, going around the NFC East, just from covering the NFL, the Giants had an eventful day yesterday. Washington's had an eventful week with the whole vaccination and Ron Rivera making this plea. How nice was it going to Eagles camp knowing there wasn't really any drama on day 1?
Oh, this is the Philadelphia Eagles, Jeff. There's always drama. I mean, like I said, when the GM steps to the podium on day 1, you're like, what the hell is going on? There's always drama. And again, he didn't shut down the Sean Watson stuff, and he was given an opportunity. So I thought that was interesting. And of course, they refused to name Jalen Hurts the starter. Although he takes every first team rep, they recognize that. They say, well, Joe's not going to take first team rep. So why isn't he the starter? Well, there's only one reason he's not the starter. If nobody else in camp is taking first team reps, and he's not the starter, well, that means somebody from outside the organization might be the starter. I thought Howie was talking to shut that stuff down, and he did anything but.
John, one more position I want to get out of you before you. I know you got to head to Eagles practice day 2. Because they were playing on a somewhat shrunken field, doing everything in the quote-unquote red zone. And they'll stretch it out over time over here, over the first week, over the entire preseason. anybody flash from the running back crew? Did anybody stand out, or was that an area where you thought, well, the defense has got an advantage again because they're playing on a short field, the back of the end zone is lending a helping hand? Anybody in the running back group either shine for you or throw a red flag up for you day one?
I think there were, the two big plays from a defensive perspective, other than Darius Slay, were one interception, one strip, and they both came from running backs, Kenny Gainwell, the rookie, and Adrian Killins, who's, an interesting guy because he's so fast and he's been playing receiver a lot. So he's been sort of a hybrid. And, ball security tends to be an issue with younger players when they see NFL players and NFL defenses. So I don't know. To me, and I'm going to write about this at some point. If you remember, Jeff and Jody, you both might remember when Donnell Pumphrey was drafted. The Eagles broke out this, at the time, Doug Peterson called it 21 Pony with Darren Sproles. And everybody was like, wow, look at these two in the backfield with no pads on. And then the pads came on and they said, oh, somebody's going to block somebody. and they just quickly junked it. And now everybody's talking about 21 speed with Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell. I don't know. We'll see if it works out, but I think it's got a long way to go. With the running backs, it's tough because they're sort of like offensive linemen. They tend to shine when the pads come on. The few times the pads come on, I will say Jordan Howard probably looked the best outside of Miles. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. But he's a veteran player. Maybe he's got some gas left in the tank. I think people forget how well he was playing before he got hurt here, and then Miles kind of seized the job late in his rookie season. He had taken over as the starter for Miles Sanders as a rookie, and then he got hurt, and he was playing really well at the time. So maybe it is positive.
John, go ahead, John. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. One last thing. How did Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson look yesterday? I know last year, obviously, Lane was hampered by the ankle injury and all that, and Brandon just couldn't take the field.
Yeah, I mean, even Howie brought that up on, he just brought it up on his own, and the fact that they think the strength of this team, and they're right, is the offensive line. I mean, that group, there's no questions about that group other than injuries, which are real questions. When you have aging players who have injury histories, it doesn't tend to go in the opposite direction. But if those guys are out there, I mean, yeah, that's the best right side in football. And it's probably not close. And then Isaac Seumalo is probably one of the more underrated players. And I think left tackle is going to be fine. I think it's going to be Andre Dillard, but we'll see. Even if it's Jordan Mailata, I think it's going to be fine either way. And they have depth. So they think that's the strength of their team, and they're probably right.
All right, John, last thing, maybe the most important thing. What was yesterday's attire, and are you changing today?
I wore my I don't know what to call it anymore, but I wore it for you. So everybody got to see it, and everybody remarked, because a couple people heard, and yeah, everybody remarked that oh, that's light. That's really, really, it is the lightest thing I own, Jody McDonald. Lightest thing I own. So I broke it out for you, so you'll be able to ask some guys who are practice. Yeah, it got rave reviews.
Glad you were lightly constituted yesterday. Not going to be as hot today, so you're going full out parka, or what are you doing to protect yourself from the sun?
I'm going to wear the scarf, the hats, the wool hats, and the parka.
You're not a bucket hat guy, John.
No, I'm not a bucket hat guy. That's my buddy Ed Kratz. He's a bucket hat guy. Bob Groats is a bucket hat guy. No, I'm just a typical cap guy like Jody wears, I generally rotate my Super Bowl hats during training camp.
Very nice. Let us turn back the clock. Don't know if it's going to happen this year for the Eagles, but hey, second day of camp, you can dream the dream.
Hey, and I want to thank Jeff for filling in for me. Just don't do too good of a job, Jeff. Don't do too good of a job. Jody will push me out the door.
Well, you're Carson Wentz and I'm Jalen Hurts. How's that?
Well, that's not good for me. Although I'm vaccinated. I don't know if Carson is. We'll see.
I'll push Jeff out the door too if he starts to badmouth Greg Ward. So don't sweat it, McMullen. You're all right. Have a good day in practice. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, buddy.
All right. Thanks, guys.
John McMullen, our usual co-host. Jeff Kerr's got his slot while J-Mac's heading down to practice these next couple of weeks. We'll come back here on Birds 365. We got a whole bunch more to break down from yesterday's day one. Stuff from around the league. You know, Jeff covers the entire league for CBS. So we'll touch on a couple other teams as we continue gearing up for the start of the 2021 football season right here on Birds 360.
Show on the JAKIB Media channel. Listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.